This is Analog Heat by Elektron, and Hank Shockley said this is one of the most underrated tools out right now. In this video, we'll deep dive into details, features, examples, and explore if it's a worthy addition to your toolkit. Analog Heat is made in Sweden by Elektron music machines. If you're not familiar with them, they make the popular Digitac drum machine sampler, the Digitone FM synth, and other wonderful musical instruments. Analog Heat, along with Digitac and Digitone, fall into a category of smaller, more affordable offerings from Elektron, making them a great value. Elektron is known for their drum machines, samplers, and synths. Analog Heat is a departure and introduces a new product category to the market. Okay, well, audio processors are nothing new, it's just that they haven't been done like this before. Analog Heat is billed as a stereo analog sound processor. In other words, it's an effects box. It's got 8 different saturation and distortion circuits, a filter, a 2-band equalizer, and many parameters that can be modulated. The signal path is stereo and passes through analog circuits. We'll talk about signal flow shortly. Analog Heat integrates well with a DAW as a plugin called Overbridge, which we'll also look at. It can be used as a sound card. Okay, calling it an effects box is an understatement because it has so much happening inside. Before we dive into the details of the device, let's just show a quick example of what it can do. Analog Heat has a sturdy metal body. It's 8.5 inches wide by 7.2 inches deep by 2.5 inches high, including the knobs and rubber feet. And it weighs about 3.3 pounds. Here we have the Mark II version, which has a few upgrades, notably updated encoders and buttons and a large LED display. On the back panel, we see several useful connections. Starting from the left, we have the power switch. Then the power input supplied by 12-volt DC at 2 amps, then a USB 2.0 Type-B connector. Next we have 3 MIDI 5-pin DIN connectors. We have through, out, and in. Through and out can be reconfigured to send MIDI sync to legacy devices. After MIDI we have 2 1/4-inch control inputs. These can be configured for a foot switch, expression pedal, or CV. For CV you'll want to use a mono 1/4-inch TS cable. Next we have a stereo pair of 1/4-inch inputs. These can accept balanced and unbalanced signals. Then we have a stereo pair of 1/4-inch outputs. These too can send balanced or unbalanced signals. Lastly, we have a 1/4-inch stereo headphone output. Let's take a look at the main panel of Analog Heat. Examining the knobs and layout, everything seems clean and logically arranged. The hierarchy suggests the gray knobs are important. The large gray encoder for the character circuit appears very important. The feel of this encoder is remarkable. It has resistance when turning and heavy indexing to stop it at each setting. We see 8 character circuits starting from clean boost and increasing to high gain before starting over. Below we see the drive, wet level, and wet dry knobs. Everything feels solid and well built. To the right we have the filter section with buttons to select one of the 7 filter types. The buttons are this soft, springy, mechanical kind like those seen on the Digitac and Digitone. Also, we see there's a lighter color of text printed under certain buttons. These are secondary function labels. We can also press both buttons of the filter to toggle the filter on and off. The light on the filter acts as an indicator for the circuit. It's all rather intuitive. Above the filter, we have a 2-band EQ. The screen really draws your eye. It's a crisp OLED with these almost Game Boy-like retro graphics. It's sure to win nostalgia points with users who remember when monitors were monochromatic. It may not be for everybody, but definitely has an interesting vibe. Below the screen we have 4 endless encoders which correspond to parameters on the screen. On the top right there's a dedicated encoder to access presets. Press and hold to save the preset, and yes/no buttons below that. Top left we have the master volume knob, and there's a settings button. With this, you can access a global settings menu including MIDI, modulation, audio routing, OS updates, and more. And below this, we have 4 buttons to access the amp parameters, filter and EQ, envelope, and LFO pages, respectively. And last but not least, we have an on button which toggles the effect between active and bypassed. A quick note about the screen and what information is displayed. The top of the display has information that is always displayed in a title bar. From left to right, we have the preset number, change indicator, and preset name. An X will display between the preset number and name if we make a change to the preset until it is saved. On the top right, there's an input meter level along with a trigger icon. The trigger icon signals when a trigger event has been generated by the envelope follower. We can use the parameter page buttons to display information relative to the amp, for example. Here we see visual feedback for drive, wet level, dry wet, and preset volume. On the bottom of the display, we have meters for the input signal and output signal. The filter envelope and LFO also each have 2 pages which we can double tap to flip between. Again, awesome visual feedback and additional settings can be found here. Let's spend a moment discussing its signal path. Here's a diagram of the audio signal path within Analog Heat. We can see the input coming in, going through an effects circuit, which has its own chart, through the circuit, and then onto the filter, and then the EQ, and then the wet-dry circuit, before going to the master volume, and then the output. There's a few key things to point out in this chart. First, there's several gain stages as the signal passes through the device. We have input sensitivity, drive, dirt, wet level, preset volume, and master volume. It's important to have a good understanding of gain staging to get the best results out of this device. Quick side note, Elektron says that in order for Analog Heat to distort properly, it's important to set the input sensitivity to match the sound source. And let's show that really quickly. Press the settings button, use the data knob to select input sensitivity, and then press yes. Here we can set the input sensitivity of the incoming signal, and we can see a meter of the signal in the middle of the screen. Use the encoder to choose between low, medium, high, or max. If we come in too high, the meter lets us know. An ideal input level is just before this line on the right side of the screen. Press yes to confirm and exit back to the menu. If we return back to the diagram for a moment, there's another important detail to point out. After the signal leaves the effect circuit, it goes through a wet level circuit and then a wet dry circuit. With this, we can mix the amount of affected signal with our original dry signal. Here's a quick example. We have a signal coming into Analog Heat. Let's turn the character circuit to saturation, for example. Let's activate the effect with the on button. If we turn the drive knob clockwise, we increase the drive before the signal hits the character circuit. The way the dry-wet knob is designed to work, at 12 o'clock it is 50-50, meaning half wet and half dry. Clockwise is 100% wet, and counterclockwise is 100% dry. Let's turn the wet level clockwise and increase the level coming out of the character circuit. As we mix the dry-wet signal to taste, this is an example of parallel processing. We can find a sweet spot between the dry signal and the affected signal. Also, when we bypass the effect, the signal is interrupted after input sensitivity and then again before master volume. One last thing to point out on the diagram. If we look at the bottom, we see that Overbridge intercepts the signal path after input sensitivity and then again before master volume. So sending a signal to Analog Heat via Overbridge passes through almost the entirety of the signal path with the exception of input sensitivity. Overbridge is not affected by input sensitivity. One of the best features of Analog Heat is its integration with Overbridge. For those that don't know about Overbridge, it is software by Elektron that integrates some of their devices with a computer. Here's an example. You can launch Overbridge as a plugin in your DAW. It syncs with a hardware device, and now we can process the signal through the device. This is one of the key selling points of analog heat and a truly unique and robust solution. It's a very efficient way to process audio through analog circuits, add analog character, while keeping CPU levels in check. The plugin expands the experience with the device and it really adds a ton of value. It's kind of awesome. If you want to see a video on Overbridge, leave a comment below. Before we get to some examples, let's quickly discuss this video's sponsor. This video is sponsored by Sweetwater. They provided this device for review and sharing with you. Shout out to the team at Sweetwater for supporting this channel and allowing me to share this device with you. Now, I've been a paying customer of theirs for a long time. I continue to shop there for several reasons. They not only have a great selection of products, but more importantly, their customer service is unmatched. It's a completely different experience from just about every retailer. I highly recommend checking them out. Another huge plus of shopping with Sweetwater is that they offer a free 2-year warranty on most products. If you ever have an issue with your device within the first 2 years, they'll take care of you. And also, they aren't paying me to say any of this. This is my opinion based on my personal experience. Trust me, Sweetwater is doing good things. And if you want to support this channel, check out the affiliate links in the description. Returning back to our regularly scheduled program, let's see some examples of analog heat in action. There's a number of ways we can use the device. Let's show a quick example of analog heat without a computer. Analog heat can be used to sculpt sound in a variety of ways. I think where analog heat really shines is in the studio. Using it with Overbridge is where it becomes more valuable. Let's connect analog heat to our laptop's USB. In Ableton, we have a file with different sounds on different tracks. We'll go through each of these and see how analog heat could be used. First, let's configure audio routing in Ableton so analog heat is used as the sound card. In Ableton, go to Preferences, then the audio menu, select analog heat as the audio input device as well as the audio output device. We'll connect headphones to analog heat's headphone output for monitoring. Let's play our track to test audio in the headphones. Use the master volume knob to adjust headphone level. Okay, editor's note. Despite the thumbs up showing that audio was playing out of the headphones, the CPU kept overloading. We swapped the computer and that seemed to solve the issue. No issues with Overbridge or analog heat after the computer was changed. Maybe it's time to retire this old MacBook Pro. Okay, back to the video. Next, we need to set analog heat to Overbridge mode. On the device, press the settings menu. Use the preset data encoder to scroll down to System and then press Yes. Select USB config and then press Yes again. Select Overbridge and then make sure it's checked. Press No to back out of the USB config screen, press No again to back out of the System menu, then press No again to close the Settings menu. Now let's open Overbridge in Ableton. We have previously installed Overbridge on this computer. In the plugins list within Ableton, we can navigate to Elektron and see that Analog Heat is a listed plugin. Let's drag this onto a track. We should see the Overbridge plugin open and Analog Heat should be selected in the device drop-down menu at the top. A quick note, this is just a basic look at Overbridge. If you want to see a comprehensive video about it, please leave a comment saying something like, yo, where's that Overbridge video, yo? Let's play the track and see audio processed through Analog Heat. Overbridge has a very useful waveform and metering section where you can see the signal passing through in real time. We can change parameters on analog heat and see how that affects the signal path in real time. Likewise, we can change settings in Overbridge and still control analog heat. And we can toggle the effect on and off by pressing the on button on the device or the active button in Overbridge. Super cool, super clean, and super useful. One very important side note, you can only have one instance of Overbridge connected to a device at once. You can have multiple Overbridge plugins at once, but only one can be actively connected or controlling the device at a time. We have all these tracks in Ableton. As we select each one, we can see different instances of Overbridge. Looking at the device menu at the top of Overbridge, it'll either be grayed out when inactive or white when it's active and connected to the device. It's something to be aware of as you're planning your mixes. Disconnecting the device from one instance of Overbridge and activating it on another is necessary to have multiple instances of it. There are other workflows and ways to use analog heat and make it more efficient, such as putting it on a return track or the master. You can also group tracks that you want to process in similar character and process them all in one instance of Overbridge. Another strategy is to dial in a particular sound and print the effect to another track. Let's look at some examples. Drums are a good place to start. We can use it on individual parts of the drum kit. Let's try the snare first. Now let's apply it to a kick drum. And what about an electric guitar? You can also put it on the master track to add a little something something, some character, some analog goodness to the mix. In addition to the character circuit, the filter and EQ are useful effects which deserve some explanation. The filter has 7 types, and we can toggle between them using the filter type buttons. There's low pass 2, low pass 1, band pass, high pass 1, high pass 2, band stop, and peak. We can adjust the frequency and resonance of the filter with the dedicated knobs. We can select the filter's parameter page for more information and visual feedback. And we can toggle the filter on and off by pressing both filter types simultaneously. The 2-band equalizer seems self-explanatory, but there are a few things to know. The low and high knobs are either cut or boost shelves. At 12 o'clock, they are at 0. Counterclockwise, they cut the signal, while clockwise from 0, they are boost. The manual makes no mention of crossover frequency between the 2-band EQ, but it would be helpful to know that. Let's generate some white noise in Ableton and throw a spectrum analyzer after the Overbridge plugin to see what's happening with the EQ. With analog heat bypass, we see our baseline frequency curve, which is more or less flat. Let's turn the filter off and leave the character circuit on clean boost. Now we'll engage the effect. Now when we engage the device, we see a slight boost in the signal, but it's still relatively flat, maybe even a slight cut above 15k Hz. Now when we cut or boost the low end of the EQ, we see a gradual slope below 400 Hz. When we repeat this again on the high knob, we see a gradual slope starting above 1000 Hz. These frequencies change slightly depending on the circuit selected. Let's see a few examples of the filter and EQ working together. Keep in mind the signal path goes through the filter and then the EQ. Here's an example described in the manual of pseudo compression by using an envelope filter. This is good on dynamic signals with sharp transients like drums. Select Clean Boost and disable the filter. Let's set drive to 0, wet level to max, and dry wet to 100% wet. In the amp page, set the volume to max. In envelope page 1, set mode to AD. Using the same knob, let's set the input level until we see peaks and dips while maintaining the dynamics of the signal. Lower the trig value until we start seeing the trigger icon at the top right of the display. We want this to be displayed at the highest peaks of the transient. Now set attack to 48 and release to 72. Press envelope again to get to page 2. Change destination 1 to preset volume and depth to -72. We should start hearing a ducking effect. We can adjust volume, attack, release, depth 1 to change the amount of compression. Now that's a nice feature to have. We can also expand the signal if we change volume to 80 and apply a positive modulation to the depth 1 parameter. The manual also describes how to create a stereo phaser. Let's quickly run through that. Let's change the filter type to notch. With an input signal looping into analog heat, let's set wet level to max, set frequency to 64, and resonance to 0. Press the LFO button twice to get to LFO page 2 and change destination 1 to frequency pan, then set depth 1 to 64. Press LFO again to get to LFO page 1 and adjust the speed parameter to taste. We can also adjust the LFO waveform speed, depth, and filter frequency to adjust the effect. Also, each filter type will change the effect. A note about modulation. Analog heat has some advanced modulation capabilities. Modulation could get its own video. If you want to see a video about that or any other features of analog heat, please leave a comment below. Analog heat is a special device, a tool for sound design and mixing that can be very useful. With a laptop and headphones, add analog heat to create a minimalist rig that is convenient yet powerful. What analog heat provides is the ability to process audio through analog circuits in an easy workflow. Overbridge easily doubles the value and usability of the device by seamlessly integrating with a DAW. A couple of things I'd like to see improved upon. 1, it'd be great to see a more streamlined way to switch the device between multiple instances of Overbridge. A button that could activate one instance of Overbridge while deactivating the other instances would make a much faster workflow. Second, in case there's going to be a Mark III version, a mic input and an instrument input would really make this device more versatile. I get that in an equipped studio there would be preamps, DIs, and other devices that would help convert signals for use in analog heat, but as a sound card, having a mic and instrument input are critical, and only then would it negate the need for an audio interface like a Scarlett 2i2 or Apollo Twin. Lastly, we'd love to see a reverb and delay like both the Digitac and Digitone. It's those additional features that make the price tag more justifiable. Add that to the Mark III wish list. It would be remiss not to discuss sound quality. It sounds subtle and warm from clean boost to the enhancement setting. It can also drastically change a signal, mostly in a good way. The settings are useful and the sound is so pleasant that I could see it getting a lot of use in my studio. And most importantly, it sounds awesome. Now the bottom line, analog heat retails for $800 US. Some might say that's a bit steep. Let's do a quick comparison with Digitac and Digitone. Each of these is $800. And using the same platform with similar design language, they've created a series or a family of products. This video isn't about these other two, it's just to say that those devices may have set the price for analog heat by relation. Whether or not analog heat is worth that much is subjective. I think the value of the device increases with each use, and I could see the use of analog heat on almost every song that I mix. It can do subtlety, it can also do over the top when needed. It's highly portable and it's a pleasure to work with. There's just not much like it, and I'd say check it out if you mix or master music or if you're into sound design. Alright, if you found this video informative, useful, entertaining, or just super cool and want to support the channel, consider subscribing to the channel. Shout out to all the existing fans of the channel. Your support is appreciated and we do this for you. And check out the links below for more information and ways to support the channel. Thanks!